So let me start by talking about the journey I want to take us on today. I think we can all learn something about what's happened to our economy over the last 30 months. And so some of this may be obvious, but there's incredible lessons to be learned about what I call America 2.0, the new digital America. And you will see many examples of this as I talk about it from a case study perspective. Doesn't matter what sector of the economy we're talking about, doesn't matter what you do in that sector, you are affected by the changes that have occurred in this incredible economy. Now let's start by what happened at the beginning. So obvious, everybody was forced to operate remotely. You recall this, no question about it. Everybody out there had to do this. Now, you would have never closed down an office in America if you didn't have to. Nobody would have done that. Nobody would have taken that risk. It seemed insane, but in February of 2020, March and April, that's exactly what the economy did. Now, remarkably, had this not been a time where we had technology, we would have gone into the worst recession this country had ever seen in 200 years. But that's not what happened. What occurred was there were all kinds of technologies being developed at that time. For example, nobody in this room knew what Zoom was in February of 2020. Now it's like Kleenex. Everybody understands how remote technology works, and during the period of accelerated usage, the technology got better. And all of a sudden, people started to find out, oh, wait a second, I can use this, I can work. It didn't matter what sector you're in. It just didn't matter. People started using it. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting. If you recall, and this affects all of us in this room, in February, March, April, May of 2020, you couldn't even get flowers for Mother's Day because the entire distribution system collapsed. Even Amazon had to go to essential services. Most stores were closed unless they were essential. The kinds of goods and services you could buy was limited because we're in the complete chaos of the pandemic. And I had at that time 57 companies that I'd invested in all 11 sectors in almost every geography of the United States. Everything from greeting cards, commercial kitchens, insecticides, gym equipment, you name it. And the reason you have such a diverse portfolio is none of these sectors ever go to zero at the same time. And every Tuesday we get the tear sheets. We see revenue and we see free cash flow, or as I like to call it, cash flow. I love cash flow. I like companies that spin off cash flow. Pre-pandemic, a great American private company, of which this represents 64% of the economy. Private companies, family companies, 50 million to 500 million in sales, those are the essence of our economy. And in March of 2020, I saw something I'd never seen before. Every single one of my companies went to negative cash flow. Now, if you're a bad person on earth and you go to hell, that's what happens to you. Every investment you make starts losing money. It happened because of the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, what our economy looked like, consumer goods and services, 50% of those went through big box retailers, Target, Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond, etc. 40% of sales went through Amazon, one of the largest retailers in the world now. And the difference between those two is you make 50 cents on the dollar when you sell through Target. When you sell through Amazon, you make 55 cents on the dollar, but you do not get any data from either of those channels of distribution. And lastly, the last 10% for most companies was they set up their own websites and they tried to sell their products direct to consumers. Most of them lost money doing that, in fact, 95%, because customer acquisition cost is so expensive. That's why Amazon exists. They figured out how to get scale, and they're able to acquire customers and sell a lot of goods and services to them. Today, that portfolio that used to make 15% pre-tax, having come through this incredible period in our economy, is going to have its best quarter in history. 17.5% free cash flow. We have never achieved that before. How did that happen? How is it possible that we've come out of this? And that's not just my companies. This is right across the S&P 500. This is an incredible economy we're still in. I know everybody's talking about a recession. I have not seen it yet in our run rates. I'm assuming we'll get a slowdown. The Fed just raised rates an hour ago, another 75 basis points, trying to hedge in inflation. Everybody knows that story. But the point is, the consumer is really still very strong in America, probably because we printed $6.7 trillion in 28 months and gave it all to them for free. Now, you wonder why we have inflation? Wow, what a surprise. However, it's really made the consumer very strong. So what occurred during this period that I want you to think about for your own businesses is essentially the whole model changed from going through multiple tiers of distribution to direct to consumer. And why does that matter? I'll tell you why. Data. When you sell direct to a consumer, you know what they buy, when they buy it, the flavor they bought, the size they like, the color they want, when they want it, where they want it. That's data. And data, my friends, is the new oil. If you have data, it changes your entire business model. Today, that portfolio of companies that used to be 10% direct to consumer themselves is now over 50%. They were forced during the pandemic to go direct to consumer. And we're going to look at a really interesting model as to how that occurred.